Okay, thank you, and thank you for the invitation, Daniele, to be here. It's a pleasure. Part of our role at the OECD is also to translate the thinking and ideas and research from academia to policy. So we're, in a way, a bridge between you and governments, and it's also a way also to enrich our own analysis. Our role is to provide advice to governments based on evidence. And in this counterfactual period in society, I think it's very important to maintain the evidence, and I think that the work of academia is much more important from that perspective. I'd like to talk today about one dimension which is not in the green paper, and it's the issues around investment in skills and human resources. Because I think these are elements that we need to consider, both in terms of whether we take the optimistic scenario or the more pessimistic scenario for policy action. But I would like to maybe frame that discussion first on some broad trends. I think in the green paper, Marianne, you mentioned the McKinsey work on identifying key technologies. These technologies are also things we've looked at the OECD, but maybe in the broader context of also broader challenges facing OECD countries and globally, including for OECD countries especially, issues around aging, Alzheimer's, dementia. The demographic challenges, we have migration, we have aging populations, natural resource energy challenge here, the whole transition to low carbon. Of course, the economy productivity is much more important because I think of the issues around inequality that have arisen with greater increase in inequality, creating more tensions in our societies. Of course, globalization, the integration of trade in global value chains, making economies much more interdependent on the one hand, at least for the OECD countries. So making also the challenge of protectionist discourse or movements much more disruptive in the sense that a lot of trade is now in through these value chains. Of course, the role of government not just providing services around security, health, and our welfare, but also as an investor. And also as an innovator. There's more and more focus now on innovation, not just in the private sector, but innovation in the public sector, in the way that government carries out its business, in the way it delivers on public services, the way it engages its citizens, the whole democratic process of government. That is also one where I think the issue of innovation is relevant. What does it mean for the perspective of science and technology policy? On the one hand, these challenges on the one hand can be seen also as opportunities. And I think the discourse on the investment is very much oriented towards the opportunity angle of tackling these challenges, of putting investment in the low carbon, of fostering innovation in health, in education even. Of course, some of these also call qualitative change in the demand as well. I mean, aging societies require different kinds of public services. Population growth is happening outside of OECD countries, especially in Africa, but with tensions in terms of migration. Large markets growing in Asia, the developing countries were mentioned, and this is one where population and it's going to increase the size of markets, creating opportunities for global companies. But then societal shifts in the behaviors. We see the interest in ecology, conservation, recycling, the whole circular economy, sharing economy. These other shifts also mean that it's investment in research and infrastructure you want, but not the infrastructure as in the past. You have to integrate these new societal demands, these new dimensions. On the supply side, the infrastructure investments also have to be constrained by the changing ecology of natural resources. Materials becoming less abundant, trying to create innovation for a less resource-intensive production, a more circular economy. changing skill sets for this infrastructure and R&D. A lot of countries have a problem of, on the one hand, high youth unemployment, but skills gaps, vacancies, companies that can't find the workers that match. So skills mismatches on the employment and job side. And then within companies, the importance of different productive assets. Data being one of them, big data, intellectual property, but not just the patents or the IP, but the branding, image, a lot of other forms of copyright. So different productive assets becoming more important for companies, affecting their investment choices. And this changes the context for research and development. I think one that needs to be much more interdisciplinary, much more that's also involving innovation in the non-R&D, non-technical side, the business model innovation, for example, that also has to be supported. And then the importance of international cooperation because of production being built on these global value chains, diffusing some of these technologies globally, public-private partnerships. But we also see within the OECD countries greater competition between countries for these knowledge assets, for these knowledge investments. Countries playing the fiscal card and lowering corporate tax, others increasing cooperation with universities to attract companies to centers of excellence. So a lot more competition between countries as well, creating sometimes insecurity, inequality within countries aggravated through this, leading sometimes to this new environment of protectionism. Maybe with some of these slides were already covered, but maybe I'll go a bit deeper. Marian said that, yes, the R&D public effort has been falling, but it hasn't been falling the same for every country. We see some countries like Korea, have increased their R&D. Switzerland as well. Other countries have seen a fall, and it's interesting, these countries that have seen an increase a decrease in public spending in R&D, even in the United States, a slight drop. Finland hurt through this protracted recession they've had. They've lost public spending in R&D, and they've also lost some of the research population. So this is a quite uneven problem for the OECD countries. So you can see some of the figures here on this side here, the countries where the decreasing spending on public R&D between 2000 and 2015. Countries like Finland had a huge hit. France, Australia. So that gives you maybe a bit more insight into what the varying dynamics and the different roles of policies in countries. So we think that a lot of the public R&D budgets are likely to plateau along the current ratios in the current context. In terms of the distribution between public and private efforts, we've seen this reallocation within the public sector towards higher education institutions, HERD, as opposed to government labs, the public research. So there is also a changing ecology of public support to research. And we see it more clearly here. So you see really the shift in public R&D as a share of GDP going more to the higher education sector, and that for the government labs. At the same time, a lot of the funding by industry for universities and government labs is increasing faster in the higher education sector. So higher education being much more dependent on contracts with industry. So you see this important dimension for your investment discussion. So all this spending in R&D and public and private has increased the stock of human capital of researchers. This is researchers per 1,000 employment from 94 to 2014. So you see countries like, and this is the stock of researchers per 10,000 employment, per 1,000 employment. So huge increases in Asia, Korea, Taipei, Sweden, Denmark, Israel, but much more difficult in other countries. We've actually seen even a drop in some stock of research. Finland, Iceland, Luxembourg, Russia. Mexico, which had a very slow start to start with, has also had a decrease in the supply of researchers. So this is a problem when it comes to trying to relaunch investment. And from our we monitor the policy trends through a database. We collect information on government initiatives, and we see that there's been quite a shift, decreased focus in policy initiatives related to the public research system. More going towards business and entrepreneurship support, and less going towards human resources and skills. So we think these trends will probably be in place for a bit longer.
4 minutes.
Yes, okay. But maybe I would like to, with that 4 minutes, I would like to maybe move to the core of my discussion, which is about investing in education and skills. The literature tells us that the link between specific skills and innovation is very difficult to evaluate. We know that advanced skills don't automatically translate into higher prosperity or sustained growth. We know from some research, Philippe Aguillon, that countries at the technology frontier maybe get higher benefits from those higher stock of highly skilled people. But we know that some skills are much more associated with innovation than others. So that includes the specialized knowledge around engineering, design, IT, cognitive skills, creativity, general problem solving, and soft communication, empathy skills, teamwork, entrepreneurship, also very important. So these are, I think the point here is that we need to think about skills for innovation beyond the STEM education, science, technology, engineering, maths. We've seen a lot of increase in tertiary education in general, and then also in the specific health, science, mathematics, engineering. But still, you know, it's a small share of the population in terms of going into the workforce. Graduates continue to have generally higher employment rates than non-graduates. And we see that the share of the graduates working as a share of the population has progressed, and it's higher for men than it is for women. So there is that gender gap in the workforce. There is the issue of the untapped potential in terms of investment in productive labor. The high end of the market, the doctoral graduate entry rates, also very uneven here. We see a lot of in countries that depend on the international students, the international enrollment in Germany, Switzerland, UK. So that's also very important in understanding that this global competition for skills is that a lot of this is already very internationalized. And in fact, the mobility is a main channel for knowledge circulation. On the highly citation journals, those who are mobile have higher citation rates. We still have this gender gap as well in the researcher side. This is a persistent problem for policy, for government makers, but also for our economies. But more worrying is that this work from our survey of adult skills is more than half of the adult population lacks some of the skills that are needed for working in a problem solving in a technology-rich environment. I won't go into the whole methodology behind this, but it's available on our internet site, and the slides will be made available. But this is a problem in terms of, on the one hand, this need to invest in R&D and research, but at the same time, this lack of adults' capabilities to be able to function in this economy. Some stylized messages to wrap up. So countries are increasingly competing on basis of their population skills, not just in terms of the corporate tax rates. These cognitive skills, readiness to learn, are crucial for, we've done some work on linking skills to global value chains, which are very important for productivity growth, and there is a a good correlation between participation in global value chains and the skill levels of countries. So need to invest also in the quality of the education and training, and doing this in cooperation with the private sector. I would maybe go wrap up and say what role for policies. We've seen some on the education side. We've seen a shift in some policies. On the one hand, trying to strengthen mathematics and education, as usual, STEM, but also some interest in trying to foster entrepreneurship, non-innovation, STI skills, non-STI, sorry, innovation skills. That's an important answer to part of this problem. On the research side, much more focus on demand-side policies to make careers more attractive. Not so much on the mobility side, but some efforts nonetheless. These are just types of measures that we have monitored in terms of what is being done to foster the skills for innovation. As I said, the increase in the STEM, developing these broader set of skills besides STEM, and more system level-wide policies. What more is needed? I think we have some of these answers are innovation in universities. It's funny that we study innovation at universities, but universities are probably slower to adapt to innovate. Investment in firm-based training, I think, is especially important due to this rapid change. Of course, that's problematic because of the turnover in companies and the focus in universities now very much on excellence in research. I think also needs to recall excellence in teaching. I think that's very important for the quality of the human capital. Fostering the digital edu. We talk about fintech, but we also have edutech. I think we need to promote that. And the researchers that are coming out also have to be ready for this digital transformation. So graduate, postgraduates also have some needs for these skills. I'll give you some examples of things that are happening in countries. So this on the e-education, bringing that also at all levels, primary, secondary, throughout. I think that's also a very important initiative. Even training scientists in these innovation skills, entrepreneurial skills, initiatives in the US, for example, the National Science Foundation's I-Core program. Adjusted government-sponsored work training. I think in the EU, the Erasmus Young Entrepreneur Initiative is promising in that regard. So I think these are some examples of initiatives to tackle the challenge of increasing, on the one hand, the supply of skills and the quality of skills to meet the demands for this new investment. So I think this drop in demand and drop in investment is going to, on the one hand, affect the demand for employment, but also the supply by consequent of skills. So it'll have a decrease in the demand, but then also in the supply. Youth unemployment skill mismatches continue to diminish the current stock of skills. So it's a tragedy that in some Southern European countries, such large shares of youth unemployment is eroding the progress that was made in the investment in human capital. Adult literacy in terms of digital numeracy, diversification paths for STEM graduates. Mobility is important. We saw that in the quality of the research. We saw that it's important for education systems. And that's going to be challenged maybe also by this new global environment on putting each country first. So investment in education from the primary through work life, I think that's something important as well in considering these investments. And a more systemic approach to policy. And this is the challenge for governments, is working across different ministries. I mean, this is not the purview of only the research ministry or only the education ministry, but it requires the labor ministry, industry ministry as well. So thank you very much. With more
Thank you very much, Mario.
slides.
I hope very much that you will be able to share your slides with us, because there are a lot of very important information, and the full package is available in the Science, Technology and Innovation Outlook of the OECD, which I strongly recommend to read. We have got a short coffee break, and then we will start later on with the first round table.